Man. What's going on, Dan?
Yeah, what's up?
Dan the man, who usually joins us in studio, but he also joins us on the line on assignment. He is does a lot of stuff, and I'm really appreciative of Dan the man joining us. He has a lot of knowledge of sports. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world of sports. Definitely the Knicks. Definitely the Knicks are doing their thing. They're at the top of their division. They're 16-5. I think they're 8-0 at home. They have a game tonight. Carmelo Anthony is questionable tonight. The New York Knicks are on a tear. They beat the San Antonio Spurs. They beat the Dallas Mavs. They beat the Heat twice. They beat Philadelphia twice. And they still have not been, from the start of the season, they have not even been at full strength because they're missing Amari Stoudemire and Iman Shumpert. And a few of the games, in the last game with the Lakers, they lost Melo for half the game. And there's a few games that didn't even have Melo. And there's a possibility tonight the Knicks will have to face Kyrie Irving and crew without Carmelo Anthony. But we'll talk about that. I just want to get on a side track for a minute. I have a book with me. I have a book. It's called Rockin' Steady. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago. This book was reissued. This was a book that Walt Frazier came out with he came out with it years ago, and he reissued it, Rockin' Steady. And I got an autograph. I'm showing the autograph to them, Dan. I got an autograph by Walt Frazier, Rockin' Steady. So if you don't have this book, I think that you should go and get it. It makes an excellent Christmas present at this time of year. But it's a tremendous book. It's not even just promoting the book. And it's a guide to basketball and cool. And if you ever want to get into the head of Walt Frazier, and it's not even getting into the head of Walt Frazier, it's a matter of understanding the man. Because this man, just to try to give you a short version, grew up in a segregated South and was able to play basketball for a segregated South, and went to college, and at a time when not many African Americans were going to college, and he was able to get a scholarship, et cetera, et cetera. Then he was able to get into the NBA, and it really gives you a detailed story of his life. And it's not all basketball, folks. And what I like about it is, like it says a guide to basketball and cool. And the thing that's what makes this book extraordinary is I've never heard anyone write about being cool. I mean, and Walt Frazier, if you know the man, if you've ever seen the man, he's got to be the coolest person. He's just chill. It's like you've never seen, he's just chilled. He's just cool. And he's always had this demeanor about him. And he kind of really explains in his book about how he came to be cool. And the thing about it also, in basketball, tempers flare. In the emotion of a game, tempers flare. Technical fouls are called because a player wants to argue a call or something like that. And Walt Frazier never got a tech in his whole career. He's had an extraordinary career. And he's never, And that's part of his coolness, and that's explained in the book. Absolutely. So if you're interested, now I say that to say this. Earlier this week, ESPN was doing a remote over at Clyde's Wine and Dine. Clyde's Wine and Dine. Clyde opened up a new restaurant in Manhattan, and I had the opportunity to go down there. The food is great. Stephen A. Smith, it was actually the Michael K. show with Don LaGrega. So I was down there to check out the show, and I got to meet Clyde, and I advise anybody, if you're interested in meeting Clyde Frazier, go down there and have a nice something to eat at the restaurant. If Clyde's there, they told me, the folks who work there told me that this is his regular routine. If he's in the building, if he's in town, if he's around, he will come meet you and talk to you and greet you and everything. And he came and talked to me for a little while, and I was really surprised. And that's part of his cool. That's definitely part of Walt Frazier's cool. So Dan the Man. We've got Dan the Man, and I've known Dan, and I know that Walt Frazier is one of Dan's favorite players. So I want to just get Dan's take on the man, Walt Frazier. You have any things you want to add and share about Walt Frazier, Dan?
Yeah, Walt Frazier is, he's always cool. He was one of the flashiest dressers back in the day. He still is. You know, once you go to the restaurant, you also see some of his suits on display. Did you see that, Mike?
Oh, yeah. You see the suits, and then actually the roof of the ceiling has pieces of his suits cut up as part of the ceiling. They made the ceiling out of his suits. And somebody asked him when we were there, they said, why did you put the suits on the ceiling? And he made a joke and said, those were the suits I didn't like. So yeah, part of the ceiling in the restaurant is made out of his suits. Also, we want to say, as being a Knicks fan, the two most recent championships were won with Walt Frazier as part of the backcourt. And Walt Frazier is one of the greatest, and there's a list of the greatest 50 NBA players of all time, and Walt Frazier's on it. And the only championships the Knicks won of recent times, Walt Frazier was on that team and led the Knicks to a championship. And he's one of the greatest players of all time. And I will remiss not to mention his in one of the playoff games, or I think it was the championship, one of the championship. I think it was Game 6, or was it Game 7, where he had 36 and 17, 36 points, 17 assists. You remember?
It was 36 points, 19 assists.
36 points, 19 assists.
It was Game 7 of the 1970 championship run. Willis Reed got hurt, and they played Game 7 without Willis Reed. So yeah, they played. Yeah. So yeah, Walt Frazier has an extraordinary career, and the Knicks beat the Lakers in the finals, and we talk about it all the time. But it's been 40 years since the Knicks won a championship. And like I said, the last time the Knicks won a championship, Walt Frazier was at the helm. Now, also, Walt Frazier has had after basketball, Walt Frazier has had an extraordinary career in broadcasting. He's been with MSG for like 20 years now. Fast forwarding a bit, Walt Frazier has been with MSG, announces all the Knicks games. He started on the radio, as we know. Dan and I
You know, I used to just like listening to them on the radio. I didn't even like listening to the Knicks on the MSG broadcast. I thought those guys were kind of corny. And I said it. I actually told them. I said, why don't they have Walt Frazier do the MSG games? Because these guys are whack. And then not too long after I mentioned, somebody must have heard me, or I doubt it. But I'm just saying, maybe other people were feeling that because he was doing a bang-up job on the radio. As we know, in all sports, like the major sports, like the Yankees, the Mets, they have a television broadcast team, and they have a radio broadcast team. And Walt Frazier was part of the radio broadcast team, and they brought him in to do the TV games in the 90s sometime, in the early 90s. They brought in Walt Frazier to do the games, and he's had an extraordinary career broadcasting the games with the Knicks. So he's been with MSG practically his whole life, in one capacity to the other. At some time, was he a coach or something with the Knicks, or did he dabble? Now Dan would know this. Did he dabble in coaching at all? Do you know?
No.
So yeah, he never dabbled into any of the coaching, but he knows the game backwards and forwards. I mean, he's ran the court, and so yeah. Clyde's Wine and Dine. I had an excellent opportunity to meet Clyde, and if you ever want to get a nice something to eat or something like that, check out Clyde's Wine and Dine. Also, Dan sent me a clip from a 1976 game of the first game between the Knicks and Nets. The New York Nets, when they were in Nassau Coliseum. Was that game in Nassau, or was it in MSG?
It was at the Garden.
Yeah, it was the first game between the Knicks and Nets. And now, this is a little trivia here. Walt Frazier, this was in '76. Walt Frazier was the starting small forward. And I asked Clyde about that, and he said there was a lot of injuries that year. And also Phil Jackson came off the bench and played like 2 minutes in that particular game. So Phil Jackson, the famous Phil Jackson, who won all those championships as a coach, came off the bench and played a couple of minutes in that game in 1976, the first game between the Knicks and the Nets. Now they're the Brooklyn Nets. And let's transition over to the Nets now. What's going on with the Nets? They had a little losing streak. I know Dan follows this. They had a little losing streak, but Brook Lopez came back last night, and they beat the Detroit Pistons in double overtime. Did you have an opportunity to check that game, Dan?
Yeah, I watched the whole game.
Yeah, what was up? Give us the blow by blow.
Well, the Nets, they came out kind of sluggish in the first quarter. The second quarter, they went on a 21-1 run. It looked like the Nets was going to, blow out the Pistons. But the Nets, I think this year, they haven't gotten their offense together this year. They known as the team that'll go up by 17 and then either lose the game or struggle to, win a close one. And that's what happened last night. But Joe Johnson came through with a lot of heroics. That was some shot that he made. He crossed over Tayshaun Prince and then hit the game-winning shot. And Jerry Seinfeld, who was at the game, he jumped up out of his seat in joy,
Yeah, I'm positive that they will get it together in Brooklyn. Yeah, I'm looking at it. Joe Johnson, 28 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. Gerald Wallace, 25 points, 10 rebounds. Wow, that is some game. Brook Lopez, 9 points, 4 rebounds. D. Will, 17 points, 6 assists. Blatch, 16 points, 2 rebounds. Yeah, I think the Nets, it's some new players that came to that team. It's going to take a look. And you know what? They just seem to be a little stiff. There's something about that team that's just something about it. It just, to me, it just seems that they're just a little apprehensive for one reason or the other. I'm surprised they put up these type of numbers yesterday too, but that's good to see.
Well, Darren Williams has basically been playing hurt. He has some bone spurs in his, I think his ankle. His elbow was messed up. He got a sore wrist. He's been pretty banged up. Matter of fact, on the interview, and you can watch these interviews on the Yes Network online, Brooklyn Net, he says that he hasn't had a good game yet all season.
Mm.
And and I remember there was a win with the Nets. I think they beat the Clippers in the Barclays Center. And Darren Williams says, "Yeah, we won this game, but we haven't played well as a team all season." So that goes. I think the reason why Darren is saying that is because